It's impossible not to work together, in my opinion. But we also, I think, struggle to work in community with each other because we don't talk to each other and really take time to listen.
If you've driven along Highway 99 through the Central Valley, you've probably seen the signs. No water, no jobs. Save California's water. Stop dumping 78% of our water in the ocean. It's no secret that water is a controversial topic in California. This is especially true here in the San Joaquin River watershed, where large-scale farms supply the vast majority of the country's almonds, walnuts, citrus, and many other crops. What is water for? How much should be diverted for agriculture? How much should be allowed to flow out into the delta? These are fierce political debates that have raged throughout California's modern history. And yet, not everyone sees water as a polarizing issue. It turns out lots of people see farmers and conservationists as working toward a single shared purpose: a healthier watershed and a more sustainable food system that benefits everyone, people, animals, and ecosystems alike. And this is Returning to the River, a podcast from California State Parks focused on watershed stories. This season, we're looking at the San Joaquin River watershed, and in today's episode, we will hear from people forming surprising partnerships as they work toward common goals. These partnerships show that we are all interconnected. Water doesn't obey property lines, after all. It flows downstream, it floods, it rains, it leaks. The choices that private landowners make have consequences throughout the watershed. And meanwhile, what happens in state parks and other protected areas directly affects nearby private farms as well. Allie Dumas, who you heard at the beginning of the episode, is a partnership builder. She works for the Center for Land-Based Learning as the program manager for a program called SLEWS, which stands for the Student and Landowner Education and Watershed Stewardship Program.
We work with high school students to implement habitat restoration projects across the state of California, working to develop their leadership development, workforce development skills, give them the hands-on training that gets them out into the field to become better advocates, not only for their environment, but also for their own ag community.
Allie coordinates between teams of high school students and landowners who want to make improvements on their properties. The SLEWS program is growing in the San Joaquin watershed region, with numerous project sites throughout the valley, one of which we'll hear from in a bit. Sometimes students at these project sites can be seen removing invasive species or stabilizing embankments. Most of the time, though, Allie's teams are building hedgerows, which are like fences of vegetation between fields or at the edge of a property line.
Our number one bread and butter restoration project is always going to be hedgerows. So rows of trees and shrubs that are native plantings along the edges of farm fields. While initially you might be taking a row or two out of your crop that, creates a deficit, the long-term benefits are so much more, especially when it comes to, reducing water issues, both flooding concepts and drought issues. Talking about extra pollination, the more natives you can have, the more pollinators you're going to have for your crop. It's also talking about the pest control. Integrated pest management is a really big piece. How can we encourage pests, healthy pests, right? And then also create a space for those pests to refrain from eating our crop.
Hedgerows act like highways for healthy pollinating birds and insects to travel through farmland. The native plants that make up a hedgerow have deep roots that hold water underground, which helps with both flooding and droughts. These hedgerows also give students the opportunity to get their hands dirty by planting native species and to learn what a farm looks like from the inside out. Landowners, meanwhile, see enormous benefits. It can be hard to implement a restoration project like a new hedgerow, even with the mix of private and public grants that many landowners can get. These projects take time, labor, and expertise.
And so we kind of became that solution, especially in YOLO and now so more San Joaquin, where we're able to say to the landowners, hey, we have the experience, you have the funding on your side for the plants and irrigation. Let's work together, talk about the actual education benefits of bringing students out that are from your local community, and we'll come and be that expert for you. More so recently than in the past, we've actually been doing a lot of our own outreach within the San Joaquin region because we have felt that there can be a lack of trust and understanding of the work that we do. So we do have to have those crucial conversations and also create that larger understanding into the why.
I asked Allie what she would say to people who think that farmers and environmentalists can't work together.
They're so intertwined. It's impossible not to work together, in my opinion. When I talk to landowners, I think about the benefits of things like cover crops, of crop rotation, again, that hedgerow aspect of things. And I think in the San Joaquin region, again, we tend to deal with those flooding concepts, but we also, I think, struggle to work in community with each other because we don't talk to each other and really take time to listen. And for me, that's where when I'm approaching conversations in this work, regardless of my own opinion, I am often approaching it with an open mind and a listening ear to say, what are you struggling with right now? How can I support you in the work that you're doing? And if I can't be the one to support you in this work, who can I connect you with to make sure you get the support that you need? The production piece of it is really important for our economy, but that production can't exist if we don't start thinking about the regenerative agriculture side of that production. If we aren't really thinking about the land, our soil health, having enough nutrients in that soil space, we're not going to have generations to come, for agriculture. And do you want it to be around forever? Because if you do, the way that we're doing it right now is not going to be sustainable.
I got to speak with one of the farmers who has partnered in the past with Allie's organization, SLUES.
My name's Benina Montez, and I'm one of the partners at Burroughs Family Orchards. And we farm primarily almonds, but also walnuts and olives. And we have a flock of sheep here in Merced County.
Benina's family's farm covers 2,000 acres near Denair, north of a Merced River tributary called Dry Creek. As part of the larger San Joaquin River watershed, the Merced River eventually flows into the San Joaquin near the George Hatfield State Recreation Area. In a region dominated by monoculture almond farms, Burroughs Family Orchards does things a little differently. Instead of bare dirt in between their almond trees, native grasses carpet the ground. Instead of chasing animals away, sheep graze inside the orchard, moving among the trees and fertilizing the soil with their droppings.
So we're keeping a lot of vegetation in the orchards, and during about November to April, the sheep are out grazing. We're rotating them through the orchards to help cycle nutrients and with weed management as well.
Benina explained that they follow the philosophy of regenerative farming, which is a holistic approach to farming that seeks to improve the health of the soil and water over time rather than focusing solely on production and output. For Burroughs Family Orchards, that means following several principles.
One is keeping the soil covered, which here in the valley I feel like is so important because when we do get rain, we want to be able to absorb as much as we can. And when you have bare ground, it doesn't go in as well. And so we get a lot of erosion, we get runoff, and we're not, recharging our aquifers anymore when we do get extra rain. It also helps with temperatures because bare ground, like an asphalt and roads, like they're all a lot hotter. And so if you can leave some coverage there, it helps with temperature as well. And then, of course, it's creating habitat. We really focus on, like one bad insect, right? And for every one bad one, there's like 1,700 good ones. So if we can help promote more habitat for these 1,700 good ones, we could spray less for this one that's like causing so much havoc.
Another principle that Benina stressed was the importance of supporting biodiversity on the farm. That means not just planting cover crops and grazing sheep, but also encouraging birds, insects, and other species to live in and around the orchard.
We've also planted hedgerows around our orchard, sometimes at the end of rows or sometimes along fence lines or roadways. Or again, we're trying to provide habitat. We put up owl boxes and raptor perches, some kestrel boxes and bluebird boxes, just so we can have some more life diversity.
Filled with bugs and birds and plants that other people might consider weeds, Burroughs Family Orchards looks a little different from the farms that many of us in the San Joaquin Valley are used to seeing.
we think we just have to have like this perfect orchard that looks super clean and almost sterile in a way, right? And of course, we want to be concerned with the food safety and making sure that our products are safe, but there's a long list of species, right? We're one of them as the human species, right? Like we're mammals, but we're also part of this whole life circle.
I asked Benina how she recommends encouraging more farmers to adopt regenerative practices like hers.
There's many farmers out there who don't know about it, or they have a negative connotation towards it or whatever. And so I think if you start off by saying, hey, you need to be organic or you need to be regenerative, it's kind of a turnoff. Like we're always learning. It's always a journey. So if we can just, share with our peers, our neighbors, our farmer friends, what we're doing, having success with, and why it's important, then I think that has a better chance of getting, just your normal farmer to start adopting some of these things. Why is it important? Oh, I'm getting better water infiltration, or it's cooler in my orchard, or I don't have to spray as much because I don't have as many bugs. I think just those testimonials will help get the movement going more.
In California's fights over water resource rights, Benina feels strongly that we all have more in common than we might think.
Rural communities and like cities need to figure out how to work together better because we depend on each other. And we need to not have sides, but just look at what kind of common goal we need to have together because we need each other. And we're more alike than we're different, really. So we need to figure out, where do we have commonalities? How can we work together to literally make the world a better place instead of feeling like we're on different sides of the place? Because we all need water, we all need food, clothing, shelter. Those are the basic things that we need to have. Everything else is peripheral. So focus on how do we protect our resources together.
Behind Benina's farm are more farms, industrial ones with bare ground and irrigation tubes, stretching across the landscape in all directions. Benina's hedgerows and cover crops offer little islands of refuge for the pollinators and migrating birds. But what if places like this weren't just restricted to little islands? Elsewhere in the San Joaquin Valley, larger areas of land are being converted back into what they might have looked like before industrial farming took over. Like big, giant hedgerows, these protected areas are being replanted with native plants and repopulated with all sorts of native species. These areas aren't just beautiful to look at and spend time in, they also provide important environmental benefits for surrounding farms. They mitigate flooding during wet seasons, and they store water underground to replenish the aquifer during dry seasons. Their soils act as a natural filter for runoff, and their flowers sustain the abundant pollinators that our crops rely on. California's largest floodplain restoration project to date was once a private ranch near the town of Grayson, west of Modesto. That project is Dos Rios, an approximately 1,600-acre area where the Tuolumne River flows into the San Joaquin. Back in 2012, the private landowners sold the property to two nonprofit groups, River Partners and the Tuolumne River Trust. Since then, the land has been replanted with thousands of native trees, grasses, and shrubs. Native insects and mammals and migratory birds have already returned to this area in great numbers. In 2024, Dos Rios partnered with California State Parks and officially opened to the public.
My name is Caitlin Torres, and I'm the interpreter too for the whole river sector, which includes the state park, Dos Rios. Dos Rios is special and unique in that it's a restored floodplain, and it used to be farmland. Well, originally going back, it was all floodplain in the valley. The Central Valley was quite swampy, and rivers flowed freely and things like that. But then you fast forward through time, and it did become a lot of farmland. And so River Partners came in and rewilded this 1,600 acres here to create this beautiful habitat for some endangered species that we have.
Caitlin described how the restoration project not only brought in native plants, but also built features into the landscape like bunny hills, which provide high ground for riparian brush rabbits and other animals to escape the seasonal flooding. But Caitlin stressed that these efforts don't only protect the animals, they help all of us in the surrounding communities as well. There are commonalities between our own interests and the interests of the region's birds, rabbits, and river otters.
We have rewilded this whole floodplain and allowed for the river flows to extend out into a large area, which allows for the water flows to slow down, which in turn protects our farms downstream. So there's a lot of commonalities with a floodplain like this where rivers spread out and the water has a chance to slow down. It actually does infiltrate our aquifer system as well, which creates better water quality for our farmers downstream. So when farmers do use groundwater, then when there's a higher level of water in that aquifer, of course, that's going to create a better system for their watering needs. So there are some commonalities that people probably don't realize. I did speak a lot with local residents here, particularly in like the city of Grayson and things like that. And they told me that growing up, they were always told that the rivers were dirty. It was like a dumping ground. You know, they weren't allowed to play in them. They were just not something to be enjoyed. It was more of like just kind of a gross place. And so I think that, you know, throughout history and over time with the way that the land has been handled in California and in the Central Valley, all of our rivers have been dammed. And so it's changed the landscape and it's changed, farming became very huge, of course, in the Central Valley, which is wonderful. You know, we thank our farmers. But there's been a lot of dumping of rubble and things like that into the rivers. We should be able to go out to the confluence or, you know, if they want to kayak and things like that and be able to see beautiful river's edges and happy swimming salmon and different fish species and native plant life. We should be able to do that and not worry about kayaking through concrete that's been dumped along the sides to keep the banks from eroding.
Other state parks are doing floodplain protection too, though at a smaller scale. In Great Valley Grasslands State Park in Merced County, a raised levee road used to block the San Joaquin River from overflowing into its natural floodplains. By the time this podcast airs, that levee road will have been removed.
This location that we're standing on is part of what we're calling our floodplain restoration project.
That was Heather Reith, an environmental scientist with California State Parks and the Natural Resources Program Manager for the Central Valley District. This district includes the river sector and stretches from Pacheco State Park and the San Luis Reservoir east to Millerton Lake and north toward the Gold Country and the Calaveras Big Trees State Park.
This historic channel that connects right to the river that is being blocked by this levee. So that's going to be one area that we're going to breach. We're calling it the punch through because we're actually going to go right through the levee, get rid of all of this material, and it'll reconnect back to the river.
Restoration projects like these sometimes face backlash from the local community. Some people fear that removing a levee would put their homes at risk, or that allowing grasslands to flood is taking scarce water away from farmers.
The Central Valley is a huge floodplain. The San Joaquin River is a huge floodplain, and people are living in those floodplains, and they're protected by these levees. And here we're removing a levee, but it's a levee to nowhere, and it's not protecting anything but keeping the hydrology out of this really important native grassland.
Heather's colleague, State Parks environmental scientist Colette Bradley, feels passionately that restoration projects like these benefit everybody, even local farmers who might oppose the allocation of state resources towards levee removal and other efforts.
It'll flood on this side versus flooding on that side. The municipality goals are just as important as the agricultural goals, which are just as important as the natural goals. And it's this like grand puzzle that is state work of like trying to piece all of that together and not leave anyone behind. It's especially hard in the Central Valley because everyone is competing for the water. Everyone has like these kind of co-equal goals because like we don't want agriculture to go away in the Central Valley. Like, that's a great food source throughout the world. We want that. But are there more sustainable ways to do it that can utilize the water in a more proficient way? But sometimes that's perceived as just like a threat to big ag, and that's not the intention. The intention is to stretch the water as far as we can because it's a limited resource that's only going down. Yeah. And so I think that's where we face a lot of the opposition in the Central Valley. Is just like, well, what do you want to do here? Because how is it going to impact what I've been doing for 100 years? This has been my property. This is my legacy. do not interrupt that. And I completely respect that. And I think, generally speaking, the state of California does the best that they can to respect that as well.
My main takeaway from these state park restoration projects was the need for community input. Both parks I visited, Dos Rios and Great Valley Grasslands, offer many ways for residents to make their opinions heard. At Dos Rios, Caitlin stressed that the future of the park is really up to the needs and desires of the public.
At this point, we're still such a baby park that there's only so much we can do at this point now. We need to get the feedback from the public so that we know how to move forward with other opportunities. PlanDosRios.org is the site that people would go to put their input in case anybody hears the podcast that wants to add input to this park here.
Dos Rios is looking for public input on its plan over the next 3 to 5 years, so listeners should be sure to check back in throughout that time period to get their voices heard. At Great Valley Grasslands as well, Colette emphasized the importance of public opinion. Not enough people know about the exciting restoration projects going on right in their backyards.
So a lot of our residents around these parks in our Central Valley, the communities just don't know. And so getting that messaging out through trying to appeal to a multitude of cultures, trying to appeal to a multitude of socioeconomic classes as well, and making sure that we're including everyone when we're reaching out in many ways. And so we have tried really hard with the general plan, but I'm hoping this podcast can also get more of a presence at our general plan meetings so that we can hear more from the community and how they want us to allocate different portions of this park for different purposes.
Finding common goals is never as easy as it sounds. With a limited resource like water, politics can easily lead to suspicion, resentment, and conflict. But here, in the heart of farm country in the San Joaquin Valley, people are working together to help build a better watershed that can sustain all of us. Whether by planting a hedgerow or removing a levee, public and private partners are joining forces to restore the region's ancient floodplain ecosystems. Large-scale industrial agriculture has disrupted the multi-year cycles of flooding and burning that helped create this incredibly fertile valley. If all we do is extract, this land will lose its productivity. Allowing the rivers to flow freely, like Heather and Colette are doing in Great Valley Grasslands, or like the ongoing projects in Dos Rios, will help return the land to its natural cycles. Seasonal rains and floodwaters will seep into the grasslands, instead of destroying settled communities of neighborhoods and orchards. Those floodwaters will deposit nutrients into the soil and attract native plants and wildlife back into the region. As farmers like Benina understand, having those grasses and wildflowers and pollinators around isn't just good for the natural land in some abstract sense. It's also good for almond trees, and citrus trees, and sheep, and cattle, and people. It's good for our food system. It's good for us.
This has been Returning to the River, a podcast from California State Parks focused on watershed stories. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it. To learn more about the people, the places, and the stories featured in this episode, please visit us at parks.ca.gov/returning to the river. This podcast is copyrighted by California State Parks. No part of this podcast may be reproduced or distributed without the written permission of California State Parks, its districts, or divisions. We hope to see you again soon, returning to the river.